Here we go. We're ready to go. Welcome to Make Your Art Journal, and we're ready to get started. Um, I asked you to bring along some supplies, and hopefully we've got these already because we're going to use this like a work session and actually get started and maybe see how far we can get in an hour or so. And I just wanted to say how excited that I am to do this with you because for me, my art journal feels like a gift. I mean, I look at it and it's like somebody else gave it to me. And I think that when you make your own art journal out of a book, um, it's infused with a personality and some amount of specialness to it that really invites you to interact with it and to make stuff with it, and then it becomes your own. And I've had, sketchbooks, and you fill a sketchbook, but there's something about a sketchbook that feels really utilitarian or clinical, and then you've got blank pages, and you have to fill the blank pages, and it really doesn't feel like it's easy to get into it or to maintain it. But I think it's different with a book because with the book, you don't have the blank pages. It's not going to be perfect, and so you can be imperfect with it. And it's not art with a capital A. It's an everyday kind of an art. It's whatever you want to bring to it. There's no expectations in there, and this blank page issue doesn't have you kind of like paralyzed. So, and what's really nice is that even though we're going to prep the pages, you're going to see through some of the pages and you're going to see the content, and that's going to contribute to the kinds of things that you put on there in a given dimension and interest and serendipity. And so that's also really fun. And there are so many uses for an art journal. I mean, I think calling it an art journal makes you feel like you have to be an artist in order to have it. And that's a huge psychological leap to get over. But I like to think of it a little bit more like, put anything you want in here. If you're a writer, this is a writer's notebook. This could just be a book of doodles. It could be its entire purpose. It can be just about smashing paint around just because you feel like it, and that's what the whole book is about. Like, it doesn't have to have this big sense of purpose, and it doesn't have to entirely be about art, but putting like even your grocery list in there with some doodles somehow feels really fulfilling. And for me, the criteria that I kind of like to use is what might my future self be entertained by? Picking this up and looking through it, what will my future self go, oh, well, that's cool, and recognizing yourself in it. So a lot of what I've used for my art journal for is reflection, and people use it for a lot of different. Some people like to try to perfect how they draw figures or landscapes or whatever. I tend to do, have tended to do a lot of writing in it, um, reflective kinds of imagery in writing, and I'm excited about using. This is the whole reason why I'm having this hangout is because I started making another one for this summer, and here's mine for this summer. And I'm planning on using this one like a field journal. I'm going to go out and have my daily practice about finding something really that inspires me and add it to this. And this will be my Summer of Wonder kind of book. And I thought, oh, while I was making this, I was like, oh, I would love for other people to do this too. So let me see if other people want to make art journals and have this little adventure with me. So we'll talk a little bit more about what you can use your art journal for. And once we've gotten far enough along, we have enough time, we'll even do a sample page. And I have some ideas for you to choose after we're done today. So, and I'll put that little freebie, and I'll put that in the chat window. That's where you'll be. So let's see your supplies. I said to bring gesso, sandpaper, brush, an X-Acto knife, ruler. Here, let me focus my other camera so you can see that. Do you see my desktop as being on the main presentation area?
Yes.
Okay, great. So these things and either a credit card or a key card kind of a thing. So all of these things, pretty basic to get started. And freezer paper. And of course, a book. And so here's a little bit about books, because there's a bit of a trick to picking them. So with my earlier one, the one that I'm using right now, this one happened to be a thick one, and it was older. And I was so enamored with its kind of vintage appeal that I decided I was just going to make it work. There's a few issues with this. The thickness of it is a little bit difficult. The age of it, it started to tear apart in the binding, so I've needed to repair that. And some of the pages are starting to crack along the inside. Here I've reinforced it. I decided I love this book so much that I was just going to deal with it. And I have been dealing with it, but I'm kind of second guessing. I'm thinking, well, I may not do that again. So we'll see. If you really, really love a book, you can kind of make most things work. So here's another example of not so good. I loved this book. I mean, it seemed like it's the right thickness. I wouldn't want to get much thicker than this. It seemed like the vintage appeal was wonderful, but it's a little worn. And the way that it's bound, the pages come out pretty readily. So that was not gonna. I also really loved the imagery in it. So I was like, oh, this is great. And it's in German. I don't understand German. Lisa understands German. She would probably look at this book and she would go, no, keep that one. Don't do it. But this is actually an example of one probably not to use, because it's in poor condition. As lovely as vintagey as it is, probably don't use that one. Here's some examples of some good ones. I have this whole series of childcraft books, and these are fantastic, and I love them, but I never go in and refer to them. They're reference manuals. And reference manuals make really great background copy. You know, we're going to put gesso over this, and then we'll have this as some background copy. So this is a really great example, and plus a lot of this information you'd be able to find online. This series, it's not like it's distinct or anything, it's not. And plus, this was free. So I want to stress, if you're going to go and find a book to use as a art journal, try not to pay money, because if you're paying money, it's going to be too precious. It's going to be something where you feel like, well, since I paid the money for it, the value in it is the content. And we don't want to have to get too hooked up with the content. Here's another good, this is another reference. This is, volume 9, 10, and 3 of the Illustrated Animal Kingdom, and it's so, I think, dated now that I'm not sure. I mean, the content is all still relevant and everything, but I think that there are other resources that we might turn to first. But again, the content is really will be interesting for backgrounds. The thickness, it might be, I wouldn't want to get any thicker than this. And as for the binding, it's still in fairly good condition. I think this is where they use the glue in addition to the stitching. So I have a little bit more confidence with the binding on this one. But here's what I'm really excited about. I'm excited about these bigger sizes. I can't even get this on the screen. So I'm excited about the children's books because they are thinner, because it's a large format, and because it's going to have really great background content that will feel fun when I come into it. It'll feel energizing and motivating. Plus, when you lay it down, it can lay flat. Some of the thicker ones, it'll be harder to lay flat, and it'll be with the bigger ones, they'll be a little bit tougher to make a double spread because of the gutter. And so finding ones that can lay flat will make it easier to work in, easier to page through, nice presentation. And then this one has a nice cloth cover. You can imagine doing stuff with that. This one I'm not sure if my son will let me part with. I got all of these out of a recycling bin in a nearby village, and they were all going on their way to get recycled. People can go in and pull them out. It's got a little bit of like water damage. It was raining that day. The bins are kind of out, but I'm not sure my son will let me part with this because as soon as I took it out of the bin and I showed him, he was enamored with them. So I have to believe that maybe I get to have one. We'll see. But so these are some examples of some books that will make good art journals. And what we're going to, the way that you're going to prepare them will differ depending on the quality and the size of the books that you get. So, for instance, let's start with a bigger book, a thicker book, I should say. With a book like this, one of the things you're going to need to do, and this is why we have our X-Acto knife and our ruler, is we're going to need to take out about every other page or every third page. And because once you start adding paint, and if you're doing collages, it won't be able to shut anymore. And it will just forevermore be kind of like gaping open. So you're going to want to take out every other or every third page. And the wonderful thing about that is you save the pages and they make really great collage material for the cover or for other pieces, or even to reinforce some of the pages when you're working in them later on. I mean, you can tear them up and alter the background and gesso over that so that it has a little bit more hodgepodgey kind of background. So, Lisa, I think you have a book that's more of this kind of a size.
I think mine's a bit smaller.
Okay, yeah, it is a little bit smaller.
But it's fairly thick.
Yeah, you'll need to.
This is 250 or 300 pages actually.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we'll need to cut out. I'll show you how to do that in a second. We're going to need to cut out some pages for yours. Wendy, how big is your book?
Mine is fairly small. I would say it's about 7 by 9 inches. It's a children's book and fairly thin. There's just something about the book that I loved, and so I just couldn't resist getting it, even though it's just tiny.
Yay! Oh my gosh, that's so.
I wish you could see it.
I'm jealous. I'm like, oh, I want one like that too.
Yeah, it's like it's a children's book called Rabbit Finds a Way
Oh.
from the 1970s.
Okay, and you know that makes me think like it sounds like a really precious book, and part of the challenge of making these art journals out of books is it's not going to feel right to tear pages out and to put paint in it. It's going to feel like you're ruining the book while you're adapting the book, and you have to shift your mindset in order to get yourself in that spot to be able to do that. So one way to look at it is that you're upcycling the book. This book, if you truly did get it out of a recycling center, you're saving money and effort because that recycling does cost something. You're taking it without any other material transformation and you're making it into a book for yourself. So you're saving yourself, saving the world, money and effort. And then another way to think about it is if you've not paid money and if you've chosen a book that's not vintage or rare, chances are the content of that, by you painting over it and taking pages out and putting your own story on top of it, you're not removing the content from the world. There is so much information and so much available to us, Wikipedia, internet, all over the place, that the world not having this book anymore is not going to suffer. And in fact, putting your story on top of this story is going to be even, I would argue, more precious than to necessarily retain this book and put it on a shelf that may or may not get referenced to. So, and lastly, when I work with books as art journals, there is a certain amount of reverence and tribute that I have. This book that I'm working in now is called Waterless Mountain, and when I work in it, I catch words here and there that are just so beautiful. And I'm not reading it, but the words, I'm still absorbing them, and I am appreciating what's in here and the emotional quality and sensibility and philosophy that's in here. I'm just absorbing it in a different way instead of sitting down to read it. And I'm merging that with my own dreams and sensibilities, and that makes it really special to me. So it's another way to absorb a book as opposed to just reading it. So if you can kind of merge all of those ways of looking at it, it becomes a little bit easier to adapt the book. And so now with that, Lisa, we're going to start removing a few pages. I'm going to show you how to do that, okay?
Okay.
You don't need to remove any pages. If yours is, thinner, I would recommend just hanging their pages and then we'll hook back up. So what you're going to do, Lisa, is you're going to take your straight edge ruler and you're going to tuck it in fairly tight to the bowl, to the gutter. And you're going to hold it down firmly and fairly slightly but firmly draw along the edge of that. And of course, you're going to be kind of cutting through to the other side. So if you press really hard, you might be cutting 2 pages at once. We want to go for 1 page at a time. And if you're finding that it's hard to gauge that, then we might need to stick something underneath there. So that one popped out pretty easily, and I'm thinking I pressed a little too hard. I did. So another page is going to come out. But that's okay, because I'm just starting, and I'm getting a feel for it for this particular paper. There. So now I have two really great pages for collaging. I'm going to save these. These are wonderful. And what I have left under there is there's a little kind of a tab there. Now I can deal with that in a number of ways. I can just leave it. It's nice and straight, so I'm not bothered by it. Or I can reinforce it. In the past, I reinforced it with like glue and then something over the gutter, but that becomes too stiff. So you can reinforce it. There we go. You got it? Okay. There. Excellent. We can see you now. That's great.
Sorry about the feedback, everybody. I joined twice, but I think this works.
It does work. It does. Great.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. So another thing that you can do is reinforce that with washi tape. That's kind of my new favorite because it also adds another element to the background, and you can gesso over that or use it to decorate or whatever.
What is washi?
Washi tape is this adhesive kind of crafting tape, and a lot of times it's somewhat see-through. It'll have a pattern on it, and it has kind of a moderately adhesive backing on it, and it can be somewhat see-through. Here, let me stick this one on here. Look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to go right up to. And it's flexible. It's somewhat thin, so it's thinner than, I mean, it's not like duct tape. It doesn't have fibers in it, and it's somewhat thin, so it'll be flexible. And you can see some of the picture and some of the words through there. And you can also draw on top of it and take paint on top of it as well. So there I've reinforced my gutter. They come in lots of different patterns. So I just discovered this wider stuff, which I'm enjoying using on the outside binding to help reinforce it and to help against wear once I painted over it. So it comes in lots of different patterns for washi tape. Cut off the top of that.
So I've got my page out, and it just, it feels like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Okay, you'll be traumatized for about a day, and then it'll pass.
Yeah. I'm not so sure about this yet. I feel like I might start crying.
Oh no, okay, I'll have to check in with you tomorrow, and we'll get through that together. You know, the best remedy for that is to put something on that page and to make it your own, because then you start to see your own stuff. It's not just about tearing it apart, it's about putting something on there. So I really think that that's the best remedy. So with that, you know, we can come back and do more cutting. Usually I'll just sit and I'll do all the cutting all at one time. But we're just going to go through more of the steps. And now, Wendy, you're going to have some, this next step will include you. We're going to want to put gesso on our pages. Now, these pages are, there's an assortment of different pages. Some pages will be a little bit glossy, especially like children's book, and you're going to want to put gesso over that so that if you have any kind of watery medium, that it doesn't just slide off. You want it to stick, and the gesso will help it stick. But the gesso will also, for the pages that are a little bit more absorbent, the gesso will help keep it from going so far into it that it goes to the other side. You don't want to bleed through. The pages of books are usually right around 20 pound, which is your regular office paper weight. They might have a little bit more absorbency sometimes, sometimes not, but that's a thin page. Usually for doing artwork, particularly mixed media, you're going to want something around 90 pounds. And that measurement is based on the fiber, how thick the fiber is, how woven it is into that page, and how thick the page is. So it's the density of the page. These pages aren't that dense to take too much. The gesso helps with that. Another thing that you can do is to glue two pages together, and then that will give you a heavier page. And another thing that you can do is to collage on it. That's not 100% helpful, because sometimes you might only collage in one part and not the other, and you'll get a little bit of a buckling effect. So if you're doing it all over kind of a thing, then that will help with the uniformity of it, help give it structural strength to that page. But if you intend on just doing, you know, like a basic layer, then one page that's prepped should do you well. So what we're going to do is, I have a whole bunch of this freezer papers that I use over and over again. And I'm going to get a new one, but essentially I cut it to the size that's a little bit bigger than my page, and I tuck it in real tight to the edges, because when I gesso it, I'm going to be going off the edge of the page. So I've got a whole mess of those. But let's get a fresh sheet out. I don't know about you, but I always arm wrestle with that roll. Like, it doesn't want to come off, even though there's teeth on it.
If I can.
All right, so I'm going to cut this down a little bit because it's rolling in, and I want to be able to tuck it in real close to the gutter. And with all my ripped edges, I'm not going to be able to fit it in real close, so I'm going to do a bit of cutting here. Oops. Okay, let's see what I'm going to get rid of some of the extra.
Ah, scissors. Let me go get some.
All right. All right. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be background sheet. So that's one side. I'm gonna put these on the other side. And I got it right up as close as I could to the gutter. And I'm ready to go. Well, basically, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gesso. This one is Liquitex, and it comes in this handy bottle where I just squirt it all in. And I just squirt it right onto the page.
Huh.
There. And you don't want too much. You'll find out after your first time what's too much and what's not too much. But start with too little and then add some if you need to. But if you have too much, what's going to end up happening is it's going to seep under the edges a little bit, which is fine. But you just want to not have to deal with extra, right? So then you can use your credit card or your KeyPass card. You can also use a brush. A brush works fine too. It's just depending on what you like. And this is, start from the center and start spreading it evenly with your key card. And it'll have some streaks, that's okay. And then spread it outward. That way you can tell how much is too much, how much is not enough. So I didn't put enough on there, so I'm just going to borrow from my other side. Now I know which to put on the other side. Oh yeah, and I think I also told you to have a hair dryer on here. We're going to need that soon.
Mine came in a tub.
What's that?
Mine came in a tub.
Ah, so you know what I would do? I have a tub like that too. I would just take the key card and dip it in there and shovel it out. Use your key card to shovel. Just shovel it out and slap it on your page.
Okay. Ooh, yeah.
I'm getting fussy. I love gessoing pages. I find it very kind of like meditative. So I love this.
I have lots of ink where children have written their names a lot.
Oh,
I think it may show through. I guess that's okay too.
yeah, that's the thing too. And
I mean,
it spreads
I don't know
around.
if you can see this.
Let's see.
Can you see?
Here, let me make it big. I want to see.
Ugh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that effect. I love that it's, oh, look at that cute book.
Oh,
That's just the right size to kind of like stick in a bag and bring with you, too.
neat.
Yeah. I love that the ink is spreading.
I think I may be doing something wrong. I'm doing the inside cover by accident. Am I not to do that?
No, you can do whatever you want. That'll,
Okay.
it'll just be ready for your own inside cover.
I just realized.
That'll be fine. And then if you decide you don't want to put anything there, that's okay too. It's just, you can prep it and then not do anything with it. That's okay. So I sometimes just go through and gesso the whole thing in one sitting, and then of course that's why I have my hair dryer, which we'll do in a second here. But I'll do 2 pages, blow dry it, go to the next 2 pages, blow dry that, go to the next 2 pages, blow dry that. Then the only problem with that is that you do have to deal with some stickiness. You have to make sure your pages don't stick together. Even though they are dry or somewhat dry, especially if you have a humid, warm day, they're still not entirely cured. So you may have to stick some freezer paper or some other kind of like, coupon paper like you have in your recycling bin. Grab those out of this recycling bin and just kind of put them in between the pages until they're entirely pure. Or you can just do 1 page at a time. Like the day before you're ready to do something, maybe take some time out to do a page, or even right before you are ready to do it. That's fine too. So my coat is not entirely even. I'm really nice and even over on this side. I'm not very even over on this side, and you can see my washi tape is sticking through, showing through, and that's all good. That's all fine.
Okay.
If you don't like it, I mean, you can consider that prepped. You can start to work with some medium without feeling like it's going to bleed through or it has enough structure to deal with what you're going to put on the page. But if you're not liking how it looks or you feel like it still feels flimsy, then do another coat over the top of that, and then the background will fade a little bit more. You'll still have the benefit of it peeking through, but you can put more of it into the background by adding more layers of the gesso.
Does it feel like it has texture as you're doing it? I feel like I have layers.
Yeah, and it depends on the gesso that you use. So the Liquitex gesso, I think, is a little bit thinner, so it might have less texture. But other gessos that are like thicker, and you can get them really thick, like structurally thick, like they stand up, like you can get them to, you can like make sculpture with it practically. They'll have more texture. And then it also depends on the thickness that you put on the page. So, like, I have certain places where I've got it thick and then it blends out to where there's nothing, and there's like a graininess to it. And if you like that, and it can be some really serendipitous kinds of things happening on your page then. Now, if you don't like surprises, you may not like that, but if you like to just see what emerges and get surprised and work with whatever is there, it can be pretty fun. All right, so I've got 2 pages. I've got like more stuff on my board, and I'm really taking my time because I'm with you guys, and I feel like this is fun and kind of social thing to do. But then so I'm taking my time. So I might go a little bit faster if I run myself. So then I would pull my pages out when I'm done, because I no longer feel like it's going to go under the edges and seep under the edges. I think I've protected the background, and I no longer need that for these 2 pages. But it's still a little bit wet, and I actually have it a little bit lit on the edge there. So wipe that off. And I have some streaks. I can use my finger or leave it, whatever. And then what I would usually do, if I want to use it right away, or even if I want to go on to the next page, I'll use my hairdryer. And I'm going to do that right now, but I'm going to turn off the volume because you don't need to hear this. Okay, turn off the volume. So mine is mostly dry, but I can still tell from the back side of it that, the paper absorbed the moisture. So it may be dry to the touch, but it's not cured. These pages are going to stick together if I just close the book and I left it that way, for an hour even. Then they'll start sticking together. So I'm going to want to leave this open. This is how I usually do it. When I step away, I just leave my art journal open. I never close my art journal. It's always open to some page, usually my current page. And even if I'm done and it's been a day, I leave it open so it has a chance to cure. And it also serves as an invitation. I see it sitting there. It's open. I get to look at it. It gets to call to me. And I was like, oh, it's time for doing another one. Or, how did I do on that one? And I think it's kind of a way of, instead of mounting pictures on the wall, it's kind of a way of displaying your own art in this very everyday way, where it's an open book, it's sitting there, and you see what you just worked on. So it has a practical value of drying and curing, and it has this really lovely effect of drawing you in and keeping this level of engagement with this practice. So now I have this, and you have the idea of how you would apply this to the rest of your book. I'm going to want to switch gears and talk about the cover, because we don't want to leave the cover like this. We want to do something with the cover. And how are you guys for, Wendy, yours is wet, right? You're still...
It's a mess. It's fun though. Yeah, I may be the non-example. Like,
no, it's all good. It's all good.
Because I have Gateso now on the cover because I gooped behind it. But I don't know, it's fun.
Yeah, no, so that's good because you'll get to the cover and then you'll be able to approach it from that side next.
Yeah.
But when you're ready, yeah. And sometimes the goops are really kind of nice. So, like, if I were to lay a color on one of these pages and some of it inevitably goes on the other side. I mean, I see I have a line of gesso here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a line of gesso. The gesso doesn't matter because we're just going to put more gesso there. But so if that's another color, it kind of adds to like the grittiness or the character of the page, and then you just use whatever's there to work with it. And I kind of like that. Sometimes if I feel like I had done this really exquisite job and I don't want the color on the other side, I'll check it while I'm blow drying it and I'll just wipe it off before it dries. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my freezer paper that I had before, and I'm just going to stick it in there and close my book because I want to work on. Well, actually, no, I'm going to lay this flat. So I'm going to put my freezer paper on the table, and I'm going to turn my book over. And I'm going to just be outside now. This book it's interesting because it has some texture to take the gesso. Some books, like this I Spy book, it's really glossy. The gesso is not going to stick to this. So if you have a glossy book, this one was a really glossy book. If you have a really glossy book, that's what the sandpaper is for. You're going to want to sand the whole cover of the book with a medium tooth sandpaper, and you'll see immediately once you start sanding. You can't sand this one. Max will get mad at me. There's one. Well, I'm going to just sand on here because actually I don't know. This seems like it's got this textured pattern on it, but it also seems kind of smooth. So I'm just going to sand this a little bit. You can tell if your sandpaper has too much tooth if you start seeing grooves. And it's not anything to be alarmed with. If you don't like the grooves, go with a finer tooth sandpaper. But if you don't mind the grooves, some of the gesso will sink into it, and then you can also, it depends how you decorate the outside. It might, you might cover a lot of it. Now with, like, this one's a cloth cover. This one needs absolutely no sanding. Gesso will go on this like you know, it's canvas, so that needs no sanding. And it doesn't need that much.
Tracy, I have another book that is very shiny. Is it? It's not just a little shiny. Can you tell? Like,
Oh yeah.
so is that even possible, or is that maybe not the best choice?
No, I would take sandpaper to that, and that should work out fine. I mean, it'll look horrible when you're sanding it. It'll look like you're like pulling color off of it and scratching it, but that's what's going to happen. And then when you put the gesso over the top of it, as long as you've sanded it enough, the gesso won't start peeling off of it.
Okay.
That's
And that will
totally
work for shiny pages too, because yeah, the pages are, I don't know if you can tell too, they're shiny.
Yes, right. I have shiny pages in this one. That's why we're going to want a gesso on that one. This one doesn't look like it's as shiny as what you have, though. And that might take some experimenting. I think that you'll be in luck. I think it will work, but you'll have to experiment with one page. And if it doesn't work, really, I think all it would take is just take the sandpaper and go like that.
Okay.
I think it would be worth the experiment to just swipe it a few times and then put the gesso over that.
Okay.
But you definitely want to put something on there because if you were to put like watercolors on that, it would just fall off. You know. So, yeah, the gesso not only helps add structure to the paper, but it gives you this background and helps so that you're not competing with the content. Okay, so I had some dust from my little sanding. I just wiped that off with my gesso, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to put my blob right on there. And for the cover, I actually like to, I could use my cardigan if I wanted to, but I kind of like using a brush just because now I can get into the grooves of it. So I'm just going to spread my gesso on this. here, and already I'm feeling like it's transforming into something that's more, um, I'm more the author of this book a little bit more, because now I can't see the cover. Now I have to make my own cover. Now it's a little bit more of a blank slate. And I'm kind of like getting excited that I'm going to be able to find. A little bit more gesso. This actually covered a little bit. Whoa, that covered a little bit better than I thought. I thought these dark images were too strong. Gesso. Extra. I'm just gonna. Alright. And then I kind of put a little tint on it. Take a look at the edges. Sometimes the gesso will get stuck, some of the gaps, and then it pulls there and it makes holes in the gesso. Okay, I'm going to put the volume, mute myself for a little bit while I put the hair dryer on this. Okay, I think my book is going to need a little bit more time drying on the outside than it did on the inside. So I'm just going to leave it propped up like this to dry for a little bit longer. And I had thought that if we had enough time, we would just go into the page that we made and do a really quick page, just to kind of help get an idea of what how like easy a daily practice can be, so that it doesn't feel intimidating, and that it's just a really simple kind of a thing. But I think we're near the top of the hour, and instead of me going through an example, I'm going to put a link in the chat window for you to this thing work? You know what? I'm going to send it to you right after this section, and I'll send it in the email, so you can go and get the journal prompts. Basically, it's a list of ideas that you can use for putting things in your journal, and they were designed so that your future self would get a kick out of it. So or that you would just have this sense of kind of taking inventory in a meaningful way. So the very first one is just put your favorite things on that page. And you can make it easy, medium, or hard. It just depends on what you think needs to be on that page. So an easy version would be just, put a color on the background, and when it dries, then just write with, some kind of writing utensil. It's a crayon or a marker or a colored pencil or even just with a paintbrush. You can just write all of the words. My favorite things are flowers, peonies. I love avocados. I love, just put all of the things that you love on that page, all clustered together, different sizes, different styles. And when your future self comes to that page, you will just have this really good reminder of the things that you appreciate in your life. And sometimes it can get kind of surprising too. So you can make that harder and harder by saying, well, I'll go out and take pictures of things and then put them on the page, and you'll have a visual representation. Or if you're wanting to be a little bit more adventuresome, a harder version would be to do a line drawing, just a cartoon of the avocado or the peony or, your favorite sweater or whatever. Do a little line drawing. Your future self will totally know what you drew, so it doesn't have to look perfect and it doesn't have to look like this beautiful work of art. It just has to be something you know. And then having that collaged all together and represented on one page will be this really wonderful sentiment in your collection of your book, the book that is your story now. It was a different story, and you're rewriting this book to be your story. So the journal prompts, well, there's about 5 of them there. One of them will probably keep you busy for about a month. But the other ones are just for day-to-day, 10, 15 minutes each day for a month. So I'll give you a link to that. And if you feel like you want even more structure around your art journal, then you can do like an online workshop like the one that I'm having in May. Wendy signed up for it. Now, Wendy, you've got a book to use. So that'll be really fun. And I'll put a link to that in the email that I'll be sending out after this as well. It'll be with this recording as well, so you'll be able to get to those pretty easy. And I guess I just want to say that having an art journal to me represents having a personal practice. So a lot of times we like to go out and exercise so that we can be more fit, and we believe that we need to do that, 3, 4, 5 times a week for a certain amount of time. The same is true for our hearts and for our creativity. It's a muscle, and we need to use it in order to develop it. And I think the art journal is this very accessible way to make that happen, and a very personal way to make that happen too. So hopefully with your new art journals that you have, also started with this personal art practice that will be really meaningful for your heart, for your life. Do you guys have any questions about any of what we covered or what to do next?
I accidentally let go of one of the pages and it's stuck already. But it actually is fine. It just made a thicker page with the others, so I'll just go with it. I guess it's a way of learning the character of the book that we select, and interacting with it. We're understanding how it's going to absorb this.
Yeah, and I think that your mindset is right on. You're going to get a lot out of it if your attitude is to just roll with it. Well, something happened. How do you roll with it? You know, the paint goes over the edges. How do you just roll with it? How do you embrace that and make that part of what it is that you're doing? And there's a lot of opportunity in the stuff that goes wrong. So I think that having that approach to your whole art journal will be extremely beneficial. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. I have a lot of fun doing this with other people. I enjoy it as a very personal and solitude act, but I also enjoy it just as a social kind of a thing. I love seeing what other people make, and I just like to use that as a way to spend time with people too. So I'm really appreciating that you joined me today, and that you guys now have your own art journal. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for doing this for us today, Tracy. I really enjoyed that, and I was really looking forward to this. As soon as you said that you were going to do it, I got really excited for it. So I'm glad that I was able to be here and learn this from you.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, we'll catch you guys a little bit later. Thanks for joining.
All right. I look forward to the May workshop.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.